Hi, I'm Jonah Comstock, Editor-in-Chief of Pharma Forum. I'm here at Reuters Pharma USA. I'm joined by Hemanth Kanakamedala. He's the Vice President of Decision Science and Real-World Evidence at Recursion Sciences. Right?
Recursion Pharmaceuticals.
Recursion Pharmaceuticals.
Or just Recursion.
Yes. So tell me, Hemanth, a little bit about what you do at Recursion and what your role entails.
Yeah, so I lead Decision Science and Real-World Evidence, as you said. I primarily lead a lot of our efforts in integrating technology into clinical development. So once a molecule is in the clinic, how do we think about the most optimized strategy of taking it into that first-in-human study and all the way to approval, and getting it through the regulatory approval, the pivotal studies, and actually commercializing a drug.
Great. And talk to me a little bit about what you're doing here at Reuters today, and what are you here to talk about, and what are you here to learn about?
Yeah, so I was actually here to talk about this very thing about how real-world data can be leveraged to gain this kind of efficiency. I think today, I'll rephrase an analogy that someone mentioned today about sort of how a drug is taken from discovery all the way to commercialization. And one way of thinking about it is you have to fly from San Francisco to New York. The discovery and taking the molecule into the clinic is like the equivalent of taking an Uber ride to your airport, but then the rest of the journey is pretty tedious. And in fact, maybe I wouldn't even say we're at the stage of taking a flight. It's really like maybe taking an Amtrak train from San Francisco into New York. And I'm thinking about ways in which we can convert this into a bullet train, and then eventually maybe we can fly. And so the ways that we can leverage technology to do that, and that's really why I'm here and what I've been talking about.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's a really important topic, obviously. And I think as we talk about technology, as we talk about AI as a multiplier, what are some of those things that are holding back that timetable and make that middle process slow, and how can technology help?
Yeah, so maybe you can take one example of how a trial is actually operationalized, right? First, you have to choose the sites where you want to study the patients, where you want to test your drug, and to me, it's really an optimization problem. We now have large data sets that have information on patient volume. So a given site in the US, how many patients are they treating real time for our disease of interest? And so I want to be able to target the sites that have high volume of those patients. At the same time, which of these sites also have experience in enrolling a clinical trial in the disease area that I'm interested in? And so you can apply multimodal analytics on sort of these various data sets and then come up with a high quality list of sites that you can pursue. I like to think of this as almost like how Amazon has kind of solved the sort of logistics problem of when a customer hits, I want to buy a certain sort of item, and it comes to your door, right? In a similar way. And so when Amazon is trying to solve this, they're like, what is the most optimized way of being able to deliver an item within 2 days, right? Like that's the Prime model, and now they're delivering within an hour. And it's really fundamentally a math problem. How quickly, in a given zip code, what is the most efficient way of delivering packages? In a similar manner, what is my most efficient strategy of choosing sites that are very likely to enroll in the timeline that I need, and operational? So that's just one example of just using data to inform that and being very sort of optimized. At the same time, there's so much other opportunity, like being able to leverage large language models to write a protocol for you. Clinical trial protocols are extremely long and can be standardized and can be sort of automated using technology. And so that's another example, but there's countless things that I think we can pursue to gain that kind of efficiency that we want.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of competition in pharma, but also a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
So as you think about sort of this project, transforming these processes, how do you make sure that it's something that everybody comes along for the ride, everybody sees those benefits, but you still also see the competitive advantages where they emerge?
Yeah, so I think using the same analogy of Amazon and optimized delivery, I think everyone is catching on to that, right? Like UPS does something similar. And when it comes to just shipping logistics, I think everyone has an optimized algorithm to doing that. They've really revolutionized logistics. In a similar manner, I think it's just a matter of time. And I believe that we're going to be at the forefront at developing this kind of a framework of sort of integrating these technologies. So in a way, I think the whole industry will catch on because these data is actively being collected at the moment and we have access to them. And then at the same time, you've mentioned partnerships as well. We are partnering with a lot of companies. Faro Health is one of them that we've publicly announced, where we're trying to optimize, protocol writing, site outreach, and so on. So I think it's happening, and I think everyone is going to catch on. It just depends on who's going to be in the front and who will sort of also implement what we're doing as well.
One of the sessions I was in this morning was about real-world evidence, and something that jumped out at me was something that a gentleman from Boehringer Ingelheim said, which is that real-world evidence isn't just changing how we collect the data, but it's also sort of changing why we collect the data. It used to be that a publication, a clinical trial was the end point of that journey, right? That's where the plane was landing, and now it's not. You're continuing to collect post-market data. So talk to me about sort of how that affects what you're working on. Like all the goalposts are changing, right?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think if you think of the history of real-world evidence, primarily it was leveraged in the sort of post-approval setting to inform sort of, as we call it, value demonstration and really to as a value proposition and really talking about the unmet need of a certain disease, demonstrating the incremental benefit that a drug that has recently been launched into the market will add based on what the current outcomes in standard of care are. That's what real-world evidence has been primarily used for. And now we're seeing it come increasingly earlier and earlier into the development stage. And we can now use real-world data for understanding the natural history of a disease and better design our studies that cater to that natural history. Are we studying the right endpoints? Are we looking at the right patients? And also making decisions, right? Like if I have a small phase 2 study that I've enrolled, I'm seeing some efficacy, but how does this actually compare against the natural history? Is because you're ultimately making a lot of decisions on small amounts of data, and so there's various strategies. Like there's, for example, an externally controlled design that you can implement where you take data coming in from routine clinical care. Let's say hypothetically you have a single-arm oncology trial, and trying to indirectly compare that against that standard of care and make that decision of, okay, do I want to invest in a phase 3? How bold can I be? Can I do an active comparator control trial and actually beat the most efficacious standard of care? And so you can make these bets with real-world data as you bring it earlier into development, and also reduce that failure rate that we all are familiar with, that 90% failure rate, and just really moving those molecules that we really believe in and that have the highest potential. So to your point, yes, I think it's being applied across the spectrum, and there's just tremendous opportunity, generally, I think.
Another thing I heard about was this notion of a kind of a feedback loop where as our data gets better, the data expectations of the payers, of the hospital systems, everyone, also get higher. They want data that's more tailored to their specific population, for example. So how do you kind of keep up with that shifting landscape?
Yeah, I think so. If you take unfortunately, the reality today is that payers still rely on evidence from the randomized control trial for their main basis of reimbursement decisions. Oftentimes, the real-world data is supplemental in their decision-making, partly because of some of the limitations that they identify, the fact that ultimately it's a non-randomized observational database. How can I sort of infer that incremental benefit that this drug that you wish to get reimbursed actually adds? And I think that's changing. Partly, I think what will drive that change is going to be high quality data that is now coming out, and being able to clean the data in an appropriate manner that is rigorous. And we also have, I think, a lot of now new methodologies that can be applied to answer that value demonstration question of, like, ultimately what payers and national health systems care about is this drug going to add enough value to my population that I should reimburse this? And ultimately, to build that trust, we have to develop the right methods and be very scientifically rigorous in how we do these things. And I'm also seeing that on the payer side, and just generally the HTA side, there is a lot of guidance documents that are coming out as well on how they would like to see real-world evidence used, and what they think is fit for purpose, what they think is scientifically rigorous as well. And it's important to have that negotiation and interaction.
Awesome. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time, but is there anything you want to say as final thoughts, emphasize, or kind of share with your peers who might be watching?
Yeah, I think pharma is one of the industries, I think we get a lot of flack. I think partly because technology hasn't been adopted as quickly as other industries. I think there's a lot of parallels. Netflix has disrupted cable. There's a lot of cord cutting. Amazon has disrupted the sort of shopping ecosystem. I think similarly, there's an incredible opportunity to leverage technology within drug development and discovery. And I just encourage everyone to do that. And I think otherwise, if you don't, I think we'll be left behind.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hemanth. Really great chatting with you.
Likewise, Jonah.